I just erased the codes. I think I just deleted my own security bypass because it seems like it doesn't want to run now. Note to self, don't erase codes. So I'm using the computer bracket from the 03 van. And I've got the fuse block bolted down here. And this isn't the right lid, this is the lid for the 05, but anyway, I figured that out. I totally had the wrong pulley on the alternator, so I just put the impact gun on here. Impact gun works pretty good. I left the belt on, and I just hit the trigger off and on a couple times to give it that impact and spin the nut off. Okay, I've already degreased these a little bit, so I'll probably just wipe them down with a rag with some parts cleaner. I use gasoline in a spray bottle sometimes if there's grease on there, or gas on a rag, and it'll just wipe off. And the gas evaporates. It doesn't evaporate as fast as parts cleaner, but it does evaporate. VHT Wrinkle Plus, high temperature. This is the same stuff I used on the power steering pump bracket and power steering pump. There's the top plate that holds the hood latch. So I'm looking to mount, I took this off so I could mount a transmission cooler, and on the 87, the last one, I think I mounted it to these bars here. The rad can still function. This still gets air in and out, and the rad still, you're not blocking the rad at all. So I think I'm gonna do it this way. I can have one attachment to this bar here and two attachments to here, so I'll have 3 attachment points. So I'm gonna come up a little bit, and this will be attached. This side might just be a zip tie. And over here, when I lift it up about 1/4 inch, I'll drill holes and put screws into this face here. I found out I had the wrong pulley. This is a different alternator. I found one a little bit cleaner, but it had the wrong pulley, so I painted the pulley, the proper one with 6 or 7 grooves. It's a bigger pulley, and yeah, it's coming along. The wiring is getting sorted out, and the fuse panel is bolted down, the computer's bolted down. I'm going to tuck these in later again. Took out this support and painted it, and I drilled some holes in the back side of it so I could mount this cooler here. So the cooler is in a pretty cool position. 3 mounting points, 2 on here and one on this bar here. So it's going to be mounted like that, and the air can get around this side and this through the rad and behind and through the rad. And yeah, mounted it, sort of hoses are coming out this way. So I think I'm going to put those hoses on here and put some clamps on her and run it back to the transmission. I started cleaning some of this up, like some of the undercoating that's everywhere. Started washing it off, and it would take me forever to wash it all off, and then there's rusty spots here, and I was thinking about just painting it black, but the prep work is really taking forever, and it's not supposed to be a pretty show car or anything like that, so I don't know. I should have painted the engine compartment when I had the engine out, but I think it was cold at that time. Well, she's a bit of a mess right now, but I did put the cooler in there. Yeah, some coolers in there. I got the lines hooked up to it, and the lines are going. They're going down to the transmission. They're not hooked up yet, but they are hooked up to the cooler. Put a bunch of speed holes in there. I was debating on cutting a big chunk of this plate out for weight reduction, or drilling a bunch of speed holes in it. You can see the yellow lines where I was thinking about cutting both sides off. I decided to keep the whole plate even though it's pretty heavy piece. I decided to keep it all because they have bumpers out here, and there's ribs and 90-degree brackets which supports this a little bit. So I adjusted this one here. This one does most of the hood stopping, but I figured I'd keep it just in case. I might make the holes bigger. I'd like to think that my new setup here is pretty slick. I got the computer bolted down with the van computer bracket, and I've got the fuse block bolted into the rad support. Fan relays. I've got more room for my wiring so I can tuck it back in again. But here's something I don't show very often, is this little thing here. It unplugs here, and most of the time I keep it unplugged. It's just a spade connector here, and then there's another one here. This is the ground. It unplugs. And then there's this C100, which is part of the factory truck engine harness, and that unplugs. So I'm just using this one wire for communication. It's purple, but it's green over here on the C100 plug. It's green. Over here it's purple. There is a green one here, but I guess that's not the one, because this purple one works. So I have a few stray ones that I was going to delete. I haven't got around to it yet. I am running power. There's power here that goes to the OBD2. There's ground, and this power wire also feeds back into the from the fuse block. But I plug it into my ignition here. This is a secondary ignition. I plug that in, and when I turn my key on, I can read the codes. But this all unplugs. This unplugs, the ground wire here, it unplugs, and then I can just take this little mini harness and hide it in the glove box when I'm not reading codes. Codes found 1. That's it? Are you serious? I thought there was going to be like 100 of them. Evap pressure. Okay. That's okay, because 1983 didn't have evap. Okay, wow, I thought there was going to be some problem codes there. Chevrolet evap. These are pending codes. Evap. check engine light circuit, torque converter, clutch, shift solenoid A. That's all to do with the transmission. I'm not using an electronic transmission. There was only one only one code stored for evap, and this car doesn't have evap. 1983 had a ventilated tank, so that's what I'm using. So I just erased the codes, and I'll see how many come back on. I'm sure it'll come back on later, but okay, that's pretty good. Read codes. There are no codes. So this is my code reader. I know it's a little bit of a mess. I never did depin this part, but I only use this. I keep it as a separate harness, and I only use it when I'm reading codes. So I just unplug it and throw it in the glove box or whatever. Has a C100 plug here for the engine harness, and OBD2, power, and ground. And that's it. There's only one wire in between for communication. This one here. And I have more room here. And this C100 plug that I was just using to read codes, I just plug into this, and that's it. And with my new setup, I can open this box. It has hinge here, and a latch. I can open it, and I can take this C100 plug and I can stash it away down inside of there. And now there's no plugs hanging, no wires hanging. Just got fuse block, computer. And yeah, this alternator, have you ever heard an alternator like squeal, or it makes like a high-pitched noise? When I have the ignition on, when I put power into the alternator, oh, it just stopped because I unplugged it. I just erased the codes. I think I might have shot myself in the foot. I think I just deleted my own security bypass because it seems like it doesn't want to run now. But there was no code for body control module, communication, or anything like that. So I'm not sure. I guess I should delete them one at a time individually instead of deleting them all. I don't know. Or maybe I should just ignore the transmission codes, since there's no check engine light on the dash, so that really wouldn't bother you. Well, I guess I'm probably going to have to take the computer back out again and bypass it again. Oh my goodness. I think I deleted the wrong code. I don't know which one it would have been, because I think I went through them all. There was only one stored code and a couple pending codes, but this is what it sounds like when your security is not working properly, or when your security comes in, turns on, or whatever. It just runs for like 1 second and then turns off. Note to self, don't erase codes, or maybe erase them individually. I'm not really sure what happened there. I went down to the van, the security light never came on. I didn't have to do the key relearn, so it only took like 2 minutes. So that's interesting. interesting news. Excuse me. So I just put the key in, plugged the BCM in, put a little bit of gas in it, and she fired up. No security light, so I didn't have to do the key relearn. You might have to do the key relearn if you put the original one back in. I'm not really sure how that works, but I think it's ready now because I got it running, unplugged the BCM while it was running, and then I fired it up again without the BCM just to make sure. This is the computer mount from the van, and I sort of modified it a bit and bolted it in there. There's 2 bolts holding it down, and there's some tabs here to release it so you can lock it in, and when you release it you just push on these 2 tabs here. See if I can figure this out. There's tabs on the back side, and they just sit in there, and on the front side there's two more tabs, and you just push it down in and you hear it latch, and then she's latched. So the computer's in there now, bolted down, latched down. There we go. Maybe I shouldn't have bolted it down before I tested it again, but yeah, I got this bolted down. The computer's latched down. Alright, here goes nothing. Originally I just wanted to scan it to see if it had any misfires, and show you this little OBD2 reader. But anyway, so I didn't get any misfire codes or there's no codes relating to the engine at all. And I put a chrome dipstick tube in there. I traded it for a chrome alternator bracket, so that was free, pretty much. And yeah, chrome transmission dipstick. And I changed the starter wires. They used to go over the transmission and close to the exhaust, like the small block Chevy. They go over the transmission, but I changed the starter wires, and now they go under the oil pan now, which is that's the way the newer ones are, like the 5.3 goes from factory. I installed the transmission cooler in front of the radiator, and I drilled a bunch of holes in the top plate here. I think I missed one, or I messed up on one of them. I don't know why. This one down, there's a yellow mark there, but for some reason I drilled it way down here. I don't know why. But anyway, I was just pretty much freehanding it and just drilling a bunch of holes for weight reduction and cooling and stuff. And I'm also going to do the same thing on the hood. So the hood is like, it has vents. Those vents there, they are semi-functional because the air can get through them. They can get through the vents. So there's a good mesh. There's a wire mesh in behind, but with good size holes. So air could get through the mesh and could get through the vents, but it can't really get through the hood. So I marked some spots here, and I'm gonna do something similar. I'm gonna make some holes here so the air can actually get into the front, which when you close the hood, that's pretty much your cold air intake right at the front. I think this is one of the neatest it's been. Got the fuse block bolted down, computer bolted down, got the harness tucked back in again. I turned the injectors around so the injector plugs are on the inside of the rail instead of the outside, and that gives me a little more room to tuck the harness in behind the coils. So this harness is all tucked in behind the coils, which is kind of nice. Yeah, so it's not sitting on top of the engine. And I painted the front of the alternator and the power steering pump bracket, cleaned up the wiring, mounted fuel pump and braided lines and filter. Put that little filter on there and quick disconnects. Ran the starter wires down underneath. I also used this vacuum port here and ran a line to this device. I think it's I don't know what it is. Some sort of vacuum modulator thing for the 700R4 transmission. I don't know what it is, but I know it hooks up to the transmission. It plugs in those wires. They go down and plug into the transmission. So, and I know it needs vacuum, so that's all I know. That worked out alright. And the wires for the O2 sensors, I'm trying to run them in line with this factory heater harness or whatever that is. I'm trying to run them over there, and then they come back out under again.